Hello, I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and today I just wanted to talk to you about what do you expect from astrology reading. Have you ever had an astrology reading before? If you have, then you probably know what to expect, and this video might not be for you. Or you may have had one that's slightly different, and you might be considering a different style of reading. Which one do you book? Do you book a year ahead or a solar return? What's the difference? So you may have different questions, which I hope I'm going to be able to answer. So the first thing is choosing your astrologer, and I've had different readings from different astrologers, and quite often it's been because of something they've said that has just resonated with me, that they've said something about a particular transit. Maybe I follow them on YouTube or I follow their writing, and they've said something about something that's going on for me, and it's just rung true and made me want to find out more. And quite often, as an astrologer, it's important for us to reconnect and have our own readings, so that it's kind of like our yearly MOT or tune-up, that I make sure I have a reading from another astrologer at least once a year, whether it's a reading exchange where we read for each other or I go and have a paid reading. It's important for me to connect because it's hard for us to read our own charts as well. So we get another perspective, and quite often I learn something. I've always learned something new from every astrologer. But if you're not an astrologer, can you still go for a reading? Well, of course you can. You are the people that we want to welcome in to have a reading. So quite often when you book a reading, you might be asked, what's your knowledge of astrology? Some people who come for readings are astrology students or astrologers themselves, and it's always fun to read for another astrologer. And the same with astrology students. Maybe they're wanting to learn more. Well, I know something about this Mars in my chart, but I need to know specific technical things, and they're wanting to answer specific questions. But what if you're totally new to astrology? What do you want to know before a reading? Well, do tell me in the comments if you've got a question that I haven't answered, and I will answer them. But generally speaking, going to my first astrology reading was nerve-wracking because I didn't know what to expect. I would suggest you take some time choosing your astrologer. Follow, listen, or read some astrologers and find out who is talking to you as a person, meeting you on your level with language that you can easily understand. You don't want to be sitting there in a reading and somebody is talking over your head or not relating to you as a person with the understanding of astrology that you have. So that's important, that they're finding out what level of astrology understanding that you have. So whether you are new to astrology, a student or an astrologer, you want them to be talking to you. You don't want to be coming in as somebody who's there for their first reading and you're being talking to with all this technical language and it's not making any sense. So can they do that? That's really important. So find somebody who's able to talk to you. Are they asking what questions you have? That's also important, because somebody can just say, your sun is here and that means this. And if they're not asking for any feedback from you, they're just telling you all this information. Some of it can be useful. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I like to read in an engaged process where I also say to you, your sun is in Gemini and it's in the 4th house of home, for example. And then we discuss what that might look like for some people. And then we find out what it actually means for you by me asking you questions. So you go away and you really understand what your own sun means, and that's separate from the sun signs that you may read. And then we talk about your moon sign and what that may mean, so that if you're totally new to astrology, you will hopefully come away from your first reading and you will certainly understand your sun, moon and rising, if nothing else, and have a good understanding and grounding in what those mean for you. And if it's not your first reading, then we can go certainly a lot deeper and look at any difficult or challenging aspects to that, any planets that are affecting those planets, and anything that's making those planets more difficult to do their job. You know, the sun wants to shine and illuminate things for you, but is it able to do so? And that's what we're going to be looking at, what's possibly blocking you. And the same with the moon, it's how we're nurtured and cared for, how we seek nurturing for ourselves. And is anything blocking that in your chart? So that is what a astrology reading we'll be looking at. And as you gain experience in your astrology, we would be looking more deeply at all the other planets. And if you have a question, we might look at the planets that are transiting. So that's where they are in the sky currently. So your birth chart will be where the planets were at the time of your birth. And then the transiting planets is where they are now. So an astrology chart may look like this. I'm going to share my screen. And if you can see that, that's a chart of today as I'm recording this. And that's a chart of what the transiting planets are doing. So again, if we look at the sun, we can see the sun, which is this round little glyph, is in Cancer. The moon is in Leo. And when I'm talking to you about the transiting planets, I may look at what is aspecting your birth chart. So what planets are helping you and what planets are causing you problems or challenges. So if you come to me with a question about feeling blocked somehow, or needing to change things at work, or needing to change things at home, or problems in your love life or something, I will be looking at what planets are affecting you and the planets that are ruling those houses. I'm sorry if that's a bit too technical. You don't have to follow all of that. You're just listening for what's blocking you and how can we actually help you move forward. So that would be a normal astrology reading, is to look at the chart of now and look at the chart of your birth and see what's going on between the two. So your birth chart would be where we would start with an astrology reading, and then we would go on to look at the transits of what's happening now in the sky. If you're totally new, I would suggest start with a birth chart reading or a natal chart reading, or just what it says, an astrology reading, and tell the person it's your first reading. That would start you off with a good grounding in your natal chart, and you would start to understand those three: the sun, moon, and your ascendant, which isn't a planet, it's your rising sign. So those three planets, that ruler of your rising sign. And those are the three that you want to understand first. And then once you've got a grounding in that, we'll bring in the other planets. And I like to do my readings with some teaching, but you can opt out of that. But I like to explain a little bit so that you go away understanding it. So you're not just, oh, she said this, but I don't know why. And I would send you a copy of the chart as well. So you've got that, so you can look back on it. And I'll send you a copy of the recording, so you've got that to keep as well. So you've gone to the website, you've chosen your astrologer, you've booked your reading. What would you do in the meantime? Well, think carefully about the question you want to ask. Maybe you've asked a question on the intake form, but as you're approaching the reading, things have changed or shifted for you and your question is different. As you go into the reading, make sure you tell the astrologer. Usually they will ask you at the start of the reading, what is pressing for you? But if they don't, make sure you do tell them. And look for a reading that's recorded, because quite often in that interchange of the social niceties, things can go over your head, especially when there's a lot of information to absorb. And sometimes things don't come to mind straight away, that when you listen back to the recording, you think, oh, I understand now what they were getting at, why they were asking me that question. Where maybe when the astrologer first asked the question, it doesn't come to mind. So do check that you can get a recording or a transcript, and do listen back to it maybe a week or so afterwards and see if anything new comes to mind. And just before the reading, let yourself settle into a quiet space. Grab yourself a tea or a coffee or drink of choice and give yourself 10-15 minutes. Get your computer set up, make sure you've got the link to join, make sure, double check if there's a time zone difference, that you've got the right time. You don't want to be an hour late or something because of time zone changes and stressed out by that. But just check that all works okay. And then just give yourself a moment to just settle quietly in, because nobody wants to arrive stressed where you just sit down and you're still sorting out, the cat's tea, or you were just folding the laundry and your mind is still in that place. What you want to do is have your mind fully present on the reading. And that might sound a little bit woo-woo, I'm sorry if it does, but it's just about being fully present in the moment. And that's quite important, just for the right information to come up. Being prepared to share. I always talk about like the challenges and the difficulties of being an astrology reader. And sometimes clients can share a little bit too much and they go into great detail on stories, which is fabulous, but you've only got an hour or an hour and 10 minutes to your reading. So do you want to spend that time telling your astrologer things that you already know? Or do you want to be gaining astrology insight? Make sure you're aware that this is your time. You've only got that time. But if they ask you a question, you want to share the essentials in order to answer the question. So try and walk that fine line, which is difficult, between getting the essence of the answer over, but not telling a half an hour story, that you may have some absolutely fabulous stories, and I've heard some great ones, which is great, but it is difficult to manage a reading where the stories take over and the astrologer then is trying to bring it back to the astrology because we want to share with you. There's so many great things in the chart that might be so helpful, and it's difficult for us to do that if there's a lot of stories being shared. And then the other side of the coin is when you don't want to open up at all. That makes it difficult for the astrologer because the symbols are multivalent. We're looking at a chart with symbols, and they mean different things at different points in your life. So we can only interpret the symbols as far as you will help us to. So, for example, a sun in the 4th house may mean different things. It may be talking about your father. It may be talking about your purpose in life. It may be talking about your home. And we can only decipher that if you're going to be willing to share with us what's going on for you. If there are issues coming up at the moment about your father, or if your burning question is about your father, or if you're thinking of moving home, or something is coming up with your home, or your purpose is changing and shifting in your life, then if you're willing to share with us what's going on with you currently, then that sun lights up for us as an astrologer, and all the things connecting with that sun lights up for us, and we can guide you then to the answers and to what's going on for that sun and what is meaningful for that sun, and we can see the connections that it's making for you. And just that little bit of information, the outline of what's going on, really, really helps us. It's really, really helpful. So what we're looking for is like a 50-50 conversation. Astrology isn't counselling where you're really unloading like all the stories and all the difficulties you've ever had with your father. We don't really need that. But if it's a difficult relationship or a really good relationship, sort of fill us in just on those broad strokes of what's going on and what's changing at the moment. That's really, really helpful. So if you can do that, if you can come prepared to share that, if that's a topic you want to go into, and if it is a topic you want to avoid, that's also fine. On my intake, I ask if there's anything you prefer not to talk about, because obviously I can look at that sun and I can see that there's a couple of topics that it could allude to. And if you're not sharing with me, I'm going to ask, is it this? Is it that? Are we talking about this here? Are we talking about that here? So if there's something that you really don't want to talk about, give me the heads up, because then I know that we're not going to go there, and I can respect your wishes in that way, and I will do that. So it makes it much easier for you. And it might be that halfway through the consultation or towards the end, you feel more comfortable with me, and you might feel that it shifted, or with the astrologer that you choose. And if it shifts for you, you can also let us know then that actually you feel more ready to talk about that where you didn't before, when your astrologer was a stranger to you. That's okay. You have the right to change your mind, and you have the right to set your own boundaries. And that's really important when you come to astrology. And we always tell everyone this, that this is your time, and astrology can bring up some really intimate and difficult things because it is like your chart, and it can see like all those things for you. But obviously we need your guidance into those difficult places and out of them. So be prepared to guide us, what you do want to talk about, what you don't. So this is an astrology reading. It can be exciting, it can be illuminating, it can tell you things that are really validating that you know about yourself, but it's just confirming them. Seeing it in your chart is really exciting and confirming, so that's why I'm like that. Just having that, okay, it's okay for me to be like this because my chart is like that, is like really affirming, okay, I'm going to lean into that now, rather than resisting it. It's like, this is part of my personality and I'm going to love it now. It's really freed me up to be exactly who I am, rather than thinking I've got to be like everybody else. Now I'm free to be my own person because I know my chart, and I'm free to love those parts of me that aren't like everybody else. I'm not like everybody else. I'm me. I've got this unique chart, and I now am free to love those bits of me that are just me, and that's okay. And it frees you up as well to accept other people the way they are. So that's your first astrology reading. If you have questions on that, please do contact me. I'd love for you to feel comfortable. Whatever astrology you're choosing, do show up, be comfortable, know that you can set your own boundaries, know that you can say where you want to go and where you don't want to go. That's absolutely fine. And with the one question readings, if you choose a one question reading, that's going to be much more contained. So say you have a question, things are changing at work, and you want to know, should you stay at work? Should you move on? What's going on in your chart? So we can talk about again, it would be about the transits, what your natal chart is. Maybe it shows you're going to be really good at certain types of career, and maybe that's the career you're thinking of moving into, or maybe it's the career you're thinking of leaving. Maybe self-employment, it is really looking positive for you, or maybe it isn't. Maybe you look better at being employed or working in a big corporation. Whatever it is, maybe the law is calling you, or maybe you want to be in the caring, nurturing profession. That can really show up really brightly in a chart. So we can answer those kind of questions, believe it or not. And the transiting planets can show us how those things can change and shift over time. So we can talk about that in a one question reading. You can just ask that direct question, and you won't get a reading on everything in your natal chart and what it means, but you will get a reading on what's changing right now. And we can talk about that. So where do you go after you've had your natal chart reading? Well, you might want to consider a solar return reading. What is a solar return reading? Well, a solar return reading looks at when the sun returns to the exact position it was in at the moment of your birth. So, for example, if your sun is at 15 degrees of Cancer, we are looking at when the sun returns to 15 degrees of Cancer this year. And that will give us a slightly different chart. And sometimes it comes on a slightly different day. So it won't be always on your actual birthday, but it's going to be the time of when the sun returns to that exact point that the sun was when you were born. And that gives us a whole chart, and that gives us an insight into your year ahead. So it's one way of looking at your year ahead, and we can look at that against your natal chart to see what's changed, what looks easier this year, what energy are you in this year, and what looks harder this year. Sometimes you may have an easy natal planet that's very supportive, but this year it's being challenged. And you may already know that. Sometimes we often say get the solar return a few weeks after your birthday, not necessarily a few weeks before, because a few weeks before you're not in that energy, but a few weeks after your birthday, things have already started shifting. So if challenges are coming up, you may already be aware of them. So when we start talking about them, you might say, oh yes, I know what's going on there. I've seen those changes at work starting to happen, or I've seen those changes at home starting to happen, or those changes with my siblings, or, whatever area of your life is being affected, whether it's for better or for worse, you've already seen those challenges, and then we can look at how we can help you navigate them. So that is what a solar return reading is, and it's just for the year ahead. So how does that differ from a year ahead reading, you may ask? A year ahead reading involves multiple charts. So it will include the solar return, but it will also be looking at your annual perfections, which will give us your Lord of the Year, and the transits of your Lord of the Year will be given more prominence. It will also look at your progress chart. It may look at your zodiacal releasing, and they're all various techniques where the eclipses are, all sorts of multiple techniques. And what we're looking for in a year ahead reading is what we call stacking testimony. So there will be multiple charts, and they'll be all telling different stories. But what we generally find is the same story is being told in those different charts over and over again. So what we do is pull out the threads of what story is being told in every single chart. So that's what I look for in my year ahead readings, is this story, pull this thread, this story is being told in all the charts, and then I weave those together. So it's like what is coming out everywhere, what is being repeated over and over again, because those things are going to be what's coming up and being most important for you this year. Yes, there may be other side details, but those are like the supporting actors. So here's your cast, here are your main three characters this year. This is the plot line, this is the story. And then there's a cast of supporting actors, subplots going on. But what you really need to know is this repeating theme. So that's your year ahead. It's much more involved. It involves more preparation, which is why it generally tends to be a longer reading and more expensive, because there's more preparation involved before we actually come to the reading. There would be more study. I've got to pull those charts and weave those things together, and another astrologer would as well, just to find and connect those themes for you. So that's those 3 main readings. Now, for me, I also offer Horary readings, and I've just started that service over on Substack. And you may see other astrologers offer Horary readings as well. And that is a really good way to get an immediate answer, a clear yes or no to questions like, will I be happy if we move? Or where is the cat? You know, the cat goes missing and it hasn't come back for 2 or 3 days. This has happened to me. Or I was fostering a cat and it disappeared. Where is the cat? You know, I have cast a where is the cat chart several times, and it has always given me a very clear and accurate answer. So Horary is great for questions like that. Will my son be happy in this school versus another school? And sometimes if you're considering a couple of schools, we have to really zoom in on the one that you're most likely to choose and ask, will they be happy in that school? So for me, I'm still learning Horary. I've certified after the first year, but I'm repeating the year to pick up more of the nuance, and I'm in a Horary study group still. So what I'm doing is I'm offering Horary questions by donation to paid subscribers on my Substack. So if you look around for Horary astrologers, you will find that readings are normally between £50 to £80 from an experienced Horary astrologer. So you can go, my own teacher Adam Ellenbass offers them on his website, and he has a reading clinic as well at reduced rates. So you can get readings from him, and also my tutors, Erin, who's on Instagram, and I'll put all the links there, and Moonrays Astrology, Raymundo Leon, both offer professional Horary readings, and I would recommend them all if you want to go to a professional astrologer. But if you haven't got the budget, then consider subscribing to my Substack, which is a low cost, £3.80, which is the lowest amount that Substack will allow, because I did get feedback that the cost was an issue, and I'm sorry for that, but I can't make it any lower. But what I have done is to try and add things that I hope might be glittery and attractive for you into it so that it's better value. So what I'm doing is I'm offering those readings to Substack subscribers who are paying, and you can do that by donation. So it's pay what you can. There's a suggested range of £20 to £50, but you're welcome to pay below that if you need to. So just pay what you're able to and ask your questions, because I need experience now in answering the questions. What I do is the same as my teacher does. If the reading isn't useful for you, because sometimes a Horary question doesn't want to answer. If the moon is in a certain place, it's going to be difficult to get an answer. So if that happens, I will offer you a replacement reading on another answer, or if I'm wrong, because my teacher, experienced as he is, he claims a 70% success rate, and he does the same thing. If he's wrong, sometimes you can see the answer with hindsight, that sometimes things that weren't known at the time come into knowledge after the event, and that's just life. That's how it's meant to be. Sometimes we're not meant to see everything, so we have to accept that. So sometimes that's the case, and sometimes we just read it wrong because we're human. So if that happens, again, I will offer you another reading for free. So I will work with you to make sure that you're happy one way or another. And also I will ask for your permission if the chart proves to be complex. May I take it to my study group? Because we love to work on a complex chart and gain the experience. And if you're happy, then I will get multiple eyes of more experienced. My study group is made up of people who've been studying Horary longer than me as well. So we'll get more eyes on it and get to an answer that way. So I've got various different streams of ways to get you to your answer. So I hope that by doing it by donation, you will understand that this is a process while I'm gaining experience, and it's for my first year to 18 months that I'm doing it this way before it becomes a fixed price service, and the price starts going up as I gain experience, obviously. And the other reading for people who, if you've listened to me for this long, obviously if you're familiar with your chart, you probably haven't stayed with me, but if you have stayed with me and you're familiar with your chart, I have a reading called The Guardian of Your Portal, and I'll link to the Substack post about that. That is a liminal meditative reading, and that is not like any other astrology reading, because you and I will join together in a collaborative effort, call in our guides with permission of both of us, and enter the chart in this liminal place. We will meditate together and ask our guides to help us, and we will meditate on the planets and the setting that they're in, the elements that they're in, and ask them to guide us towards one of the stakes in your chart. So you will choose the stake that you want to explore, one of the angles in your chart. Maybe it's your IC that you've never fully understood, or your descendant, or your MC, and you want to understand how to work better with it. So we will go on a journey together, or a quest, or a pilgrimage to that place in your chart by the planets that are connected to it in some way. Maybe that's the ruling planet, maybe it's an aspected planet, maybe it's a bound or term or triplicity ruler. So however they're connected, I'll pull out those planets that I'm drawn to. Again, I'll meditate on it and select those planets that I think have got the most to say, whether they're challenging or supportive. And we'll find out what gifts they've got to offer you, what challenges they're asking, and how you can help them as well. And through prompts, we'll talk and interact with those planets and see how they'll move you forward towards understanding that portal. And together, as we journey closer, we'll then ask if you can enter that portal. And the results have been quite amazing and mind-blowing. I mean, to me, I was surprised at how effective it actually was. I didn't expect or even hope in my wildest dreams that it would be that effective as a reading so early in bringing insights into that place in your chart and understanding it in a whole new way, and bringing insights that you can then work with out in the real world, even though it's like this soft reading, this meditative reading, but it's giving you information that you can then use depending on what stake or what angle you choose to work with. But that information can then be used as you go out into the real world, that information about yourself or about how those planets are interacting with it and what they want you to do with that angle, and how you can work with them and how they want to work with you. So it's a special reading. I hope it becomes my signature reading, but at the moment it's still available by donation for followers. So again, I'll link to that, and if you're interested, you can book that in with me. So I look forward to meeting you. But most of all, book an astrologer that you feel like you can trust, that's speaking to you, and do feel free to ask any questions about how to book an astrology reading, what you need to do to prepare for an astrology reading, and what an astrology reading will be telling you. So I hope I've covered everything, but do tell me what I've missed because I've been in this astrology bubble, and there may be questions that are there for you that I haven't thought of. So do help me out here, please. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.